Hi, everybody. I'm David Belsky. We have a very special guest today. We have Kate Miller, the CEO and founder of Miss Grass. Thank you for joining us, Kate.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Good to
Always.
see you too. Wow. I mean, we kind of got started in this era of our cannabis entrepreneurial journey around the same geography in Southern California at the same time, but we'll get to that in a second. For folks that don't know, talk to me about Miss Grass and what it is. What is Miss Grass? What is the brand and what type of products is Miss Grass known for?
So we like to refer to ourselves as a community-led brand. It's how we started as a community national platform before we launched our own product line, which today looks like pre-rolls, infused pre-rolls, flower, and recently gummies launched that are hemp derived.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was in Jersey a few months ago and I picked up the party pack.
Yeah.
It was like 20 individually wrapped joints, I believe. And I will just say the innovation in you're not just copying catting what other brands are doing, you're doing your own type of innovation. And I loved that. I'd never seen that before. So what a brilliant idea.
Thank you. Yeah, that one's really fun. We launched it last year during the summertime. It was supposed to be a LTO, a limited time offer just for summertime in Massachusetts, and it did so well. It's turned into an evergreen SKU there. And then similarly, we right now are thinking of it as a limited time offer for Jersey summertime shore hangs. So we just launched, I think, last week. So you may have gotten one of the first ones in New Jersey.
Wow, I'm glad I got it. Talk to me about like, why you decided to start Miss Grass. Like, what was it about gaps that you saw, or your belief in the plant? What was it that was like, this is my passion, this is what I need to do as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I would say I'll try to give like the short answer because I do feel there was a lot that was like the seed of this thing that was like planted and continuing to grow over a decade plus of my life. First, start out, I've always had a relationship with this plant. Growing up in Jersey, I was like the girl who rolled weed, smoked weed, you want weed, Kate has it. Fast forward, I moved out to Los Angeles. I went to college at USC. California had a medical program. So for the first time, I was introduced to a legal market, walked into a dispensary as a medical patient and was just like kid in a candy shop. And at the same time, that's kind of what planted the seed for Miss Grass, especially back then. I landed up working and I had a little stint as a budtender throughout college. And especially back then, there wasn't a lot of brands or services or platforms that spoke or represented this plant or the consumer base that resonated with myself or so many people in my life that were consuming this plant a bit more consciously, that was like smoking a joint and walking to class and like getting straight A's. Like, not to say you need to be a straight A student, but I'm just saying like there was such a gap with like, man, I am a stoner and like nothing here represents the full breadth of this plant, the richness of its history. So that's kind of what planted the seed, not like fully conceptualizing what Miss Grass would become because we didn't launch until a decade later, but we did buy the URL then. I went on GoDaddy and secured missgrass.com. And then over a decade later, we launched with really that like same mission of representing conscious consumers and high quality and education and really being community first.
Yeah, so working in a Prop 215 era dispensary, a lot of trappy brands, a lot of like, it felt like male OG like culture, which California is known for, and
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. And people that believe in that culture consume a lot of cannabis, right? Which is great, but but didn't really speak to you or cannabis as part of a healthy and balanced lifestyle, more wellness oriented for female consumers or working professionals.
For sure. And like, I think that the term wellness has like has this connotation of like this like yoga going, green juice drinking, like woman, and that is a segment of our community, but like also like a big part of our community just wants to get high and have fun, and that we're also serving that consumer base too. But exactly, like I mean, to give you a sense, at the dispensary I worked, we had a dab bar on the right, which now looking back, I'm like, oh, I guess that wasn't legal. But yeah, we had a dab bar. You walk in, you go through a metal detector. It was just different times, got paid all in
Yeah.
cash. I learned how to roll like a cross blunt at work. I loved those days, and it definitely was a specific, targeting a very specific consumer base. But even so many people at that time were coming into the dispensary that had like true medical issues that were looking for this plant for a whole host of different things. And definitely there was like a disconnect with the culture and the brands and the aesthetic to even that community back then. So yeah, that's really what like inspired the brand.
Got it. I mean, you witnessed like what was a beautiful and thriving medical market, but that had a lot of room for evolution. And I think that the dispensary experience across the country is still trying to find a way to serve people that are looking for true medical purposes as well as recreational customers. There's still work in progress in 2025. But so we talked about this earlier. So college, when the East Coast, started your career, and at some point it was like, it's my time. What was that moment where it's like, I'm starting Miss Grass right now. I got the domain. It's on.
Yeah, I feel there was like a bunch of things going on at that time. So one, yeah, I was living in LA. I graduated college. I worked for a TV producer out there post college. I then got a job in New York for running brand partnerships for Lauren Michaels' company, Broadway Video. So handled that across Saturday Night Live, Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, a bunch of his like film, television, and digital properties. And around that time, California had just voted or was about to vote to go recreational. So that was happening, which, as you know, that like was the catalyst that set off so many other states and just the movement. So that was happening. And it was just like, I noticed in my own life, like more and more tables that I was sitting at, cannabis would get brought up. Like, and I was like, okay, there is a shift that is happening. And it felt like
Yeah.
right time crossed with something I'm so passionate about. And I've always been super entrepreneurial. So it was like right time, right place. I had Miss Grass sitting and, collecting dust as in my GoDaddy site. So
But
just,
you were renewing it. You knew it would come in handy.
I mean, at
Uh,
that time I was renewing way too many URLs. I should have got rid of a lot more, but I was one of those get high, have an idea, and like go on GoDaddy and buy the URL. I don't know why I thought that was like step one of being an entrepreneur.
I still think it's step one. I still like that. Um, but you just kind of casually talked through it, but you had a good gig with great perks,
It
you
was
know,
awesome. Yeah.
but it was like everything was leading you in this direction. You felt that, and there's definitely been a sea change, for sure. Even in, the 8 years I've been running FlowerHire, when we first were focused on California and in California employers before now becoming more nationwide, it was such a stigma working in cannabis in like 2017. Like legitimate career suicide. How am I going to tell my family? And literally, it's flipped. Where I think it was, again, even though this might not be true, because cannabis was an essential service in 2020, people thought of it as essential and stable, like they would a pharmacy, and it's definitely not stable, but
No, I was gonna say
but
stable. That's not a hurt. That's not a
no,
word I hear describe the cannabis industry.
no, it's a misperception. So what we have to educate on that. But it's like it's wild how quickly that like pendulum swung, and so okay, right now. So when you started, you went to Venice, and again, FlowerHire started. Our first customer was Ease in like 2017, and they, even though they had a San Francisco office, like the cannabis business of that company was in Venice.
Yeah.
right? But you had Men was the largest employer for legal cannabis in the country, in Culver City, right next to it. But then it was like, Miss Grass. It was like it was Old Pal. There was so many businesses that started in Venice Beach in the cannabis industry, so many brands in 2018, 2017. Can was there. Like what why was that? What was your recollection of that time in history?
I just remember it like it feels like the golden era of weed now looking back. Like I definitely had like rose colored glasses on back then. It was just, I was building this dream brand with incredible people around me in such a fun place, Venice Beach. We had a really great office, not not our first office, but what we graduated into as the company grew, early days. And to your point, it was kind of like a hub of like there was just so much going on at that time with the cannabis space. So yeah, it was like super inspiring to be there. I really think like the roots of us being birthed in Venice Beach really did like inspire, and in some ways like still trickles through to like who we are today.
Yeah, and it was the time also that like bird scooters had come into
Right.
existence, and like Venice, I think they were based in Venice too. So that was like it was a weird time in history for sure. But it was like the the anticipation of a market, like where you have the largest adult use market potentially on the planet that had already been voted in, that 12 to 18-month period. I don't know how long, but when before adult use took effect, and then when it took effect, like that whole period of time, I used to call it the glory days of cannabis. Like the first time we ever did a newsletter, that was the name of the newsletter. Coming to you from Venice Beach, the glory days of cannabis.
It did
But
feel that way though. And there was just like
dude, it did.
so much even like around our industry, for our industry, which obviously has changed a lot. Like one, just like investor appetite was there,
Oh
other
yeah.
time
We're
we
building Coca-Cola and brands of the Diageo portfolio right now in California.
totally,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, I mean, we did such fun partnerships. We partnered with Beats by Dre. They did like a custom Miss Grass Beats pill. We did a dinner on Abbot Kinney with them. We did events with all the Soho like there was just at that time, I feel,
It
yeah,
was such a novelty. It was
really was.
such a it was such a novelty where the first time things like that could be pulled off, you were pulling them off. The
Yeah,
first time like a Beats by Dre would partner with a cannabis brand, have a limited drop of merch, and host the party at the Soho House, you were part of that circle,
yeah.
right? And it was wild times. It was wild times. Not making money, but wild times. So now, okay, your pre-rolls and your products, how many markets, how many states can you purchase them in?
Yeah, so I should actually say at that time, what we're talking about, like early days Miss Grass, we didn't launch with product. We launched as the business model was a contextual commerce platform. So think of it, an online magazine, and we were converting through a third-party marketplace, all hemp-derived and cannabis accessory products. Third party, I should say, not our own brand, which at the time I didn't realize I could sell hemp-derived THC, but so it was a lot of CBD products, as well as accessories. And that was somewhat a means to an end of grow and scale a national community, have a really intimate relationship with our community so that we understand like what they're reading, what they're purchasing, why they want to get high, when they're getting high, what's the right dose for them, and ultimately leverage all of that first party data to develop what became the Miss Grass product line, which wasn't until like 2.5 years after launching the brand. So today that product line, which is mainly pre-rolls, but we have flower in select states that we bring over our own genetics in partnership with Purple City Genetics. We are in California, Arizona, Missouri, Massachusetts, Illinois, New York, and New Jersey.
Wow. And so you built a bit of an audience, a following, really got to understand your customer through the initial sort of content and e-commerce play. And then you're like, this has always been about the plant. Like, this is what we need to do. And you went all in into the adult use regulated markets and getting your products in the hands of consumers who wanted them around the country.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you've been able to get them into basically the top adult use markets around the country at this point, through partnerships and through your unique genetics, and you have partners in these states that are excited to bring your product and to consumers in their state, because you've built a brand that is recognizable, that has some legs and some story and some history in the space. And so could you imagine when you moved to Venice and took this on, that the brand would be as far along as it is right now, in that way, that it would be distributed like it has been, available to millions of people to go into a dispensary to go and buy a Miss Grass product? Could you imagine that when you started?
It's really cool and like humbling to think about. Like, yes and no, like no, because I couldn't imagine or predict, or have I gotten any of my predictions correct so far in this 8-year journey of like, from a regulatory perspective, which states are going to turn on when, federal legalization, federal, any type of federal movement. Like, I could not predict that. I did not predict that. So no, I couldn't exactly visualize like Miss Grass would be available in these states 7.5 years later. But from the very beginning, our goal has always to build a national, even global brand. It's why we started as a national platform first, before, going state by state in the state regulated channels. So, honestly, I thought not necessarily the brand, just the industry overall, and then in turn the brand like would have actually more distribution at this point in the journey.
Well, you had no idea how it was going to materialize or take shape. There was a vision for it, and you've done what you needed to do, navigated what you needed to do along the way to get it to where it is now. And it's impressive. I mean, at the end of the day, there's of all the brands that started on the West Coast in California between 2017 and 2019, how many of them are still alive? And how many flower brands are still alive? And how many women focused or women owned brands, sorry, are still around, right? Um, so definitely not easy to do. At the same time, like for me, like I what I would say is, I just went to Benzinga, and friends and colleagues and clients around the country in one city, and Benzinga does a really good job of being that sort of concentrated, like the kind of right folks in one place. And we have clients in around the country. We work with businesses in 25 states. Like, we're a known entity, in these markets. I couldn't necessarily have imagined being any further along when I started, in terms of like the client base and the impression of the organization. For FlowerHire, we were a 12-person company, right? And I saw, and people like have heard of us, like we're huge, and there's doesn't take much to be institutional in cannabis, because they're started from nothing, right? All of us, so there's something there. But I would not have imagined it would still be so dicey. If you'd have told me that we'd gotten to there, that, and so it's really hard sometimes to appreciate the journey, and the fact that surviving is actually doing great, in an issue like this. But could you have pictured the widespread access, but like the challenge of the present? Like, are you able to enjoy it?
Yeah, I am able to enjoy it. Of course, I would imagine in any entrepreneurial's journey, inside or outside of cannabis, there's like days that you're just like, fuck this, like, man, and I think that's only heightened in our industry. Like, it objectively, our industry is a very challenging industry. It's federally illegal. There's state by state complexities and nuances and regulations. And like, it's just a challenging industry to build a business and to build a brand. But yeah, like I'm so grateful that I get to build a brand with people that I love and I respect, and just like I am so passionate about what we are building and who we get to serve, and the community that keeps getting bigger, and getting high on my own supply. Like, there's just so many elements of it that I am genuinely like really happy.
I believe it. I mean, because you think about the the reputation you have with partners that you work with, and your lean and mean team out there too. And everyone very much appreciates that passion and that belief. And what's next for the brand? Like, is it more states? Like, what are you excited about?
Yeah, I mean, our mission has always been to make cannabis accessible. So that has translated a lot, thinking about expansion, like how can we get our brand and our products in the hands of more consumers? That is on the MJ side, unlocking more states through partnerships as we've done. So we have a couple more states on the lineup this year. We're really excited. Our next one we'll be launching is Florida. So I guess you heard it here first, but
Woo! Florida.
and
There you
then
go.
the what's happening with hemp derived delta 9 THC and cannabinoids is really exciting, just when you think of it from a consumer access perspective. Like, all of a sudden, so many more consumers, and many of which are in states that don't have a legal, state regulated program, now can access this same plant with, D2C or through national wholesale channels. So that's also something that we're really excited about. And we recently launched hemp derived THC gummies.
Well, gummies. Well, there's never been, I'd say, more access to some form of cannabis than right now, especially more sort of tested and standardized products. And I live in a prohibition state currently. I moved here to Tennessee outside of Nashville about 4 years ago, but there's a dispensary like 8 minutes from me that has everything that a dispensary in California would have. I don't know about the same quality or selection, but it's it's like literally a dispensary. It's just all Farm Bill compliant. Which is just another spin of the same thing. And it's kind of wild. Where do you think all that's heading? If you were to, not that you
Yeah,
want to
I
predict.
mean, yeah, I can't say I'll get this right, but I think that you're gonna kind of see, at least for the foreseeable future, it look a lot like how the MJ rollout happened, except in the inverse, where, cannabis is federally legal and each state kind of is coming online and regulating it. And, the Farm Bill made hemp derived cannabinoids federally legal. And then you're seeing more and more states come out and create a regulated program around it. So I think that that's going to keep happening on the state level.
Yeah.
I hope what happens is the explosion that's happening on the hemp side, and the folks that are behind the hemp side outside of even the cannabis industry, I hope forces the conversation and movement at the federal level. And I hope what that looks like is regulating at the molecular level, not at the plant level, not like, oh, MJ, if it's above 0.3% at the dry plant, it's this, and hemp is this. Like, I hope there's some sensible regulation, and this is thought of holistically as the same plant, because it is. So that's what I hope. Like, I hope this is kind of like the Trojan horse of federal legalization and a federally regulated overall cannabis program and industry.
Yeah. And it definitely could be, and I think it's in every state has its own marketplace, but you're right. It's like, I see what you see approaching in different ways. Like, Tennessee issued like hemp derived retail licenses, which is the same fucking thing as a state run adult use program. I mean, it's just called something different, and it makes no sense. We'll see where it all goes, but I like your positivity and all the good that could come from the current state of things. You're right. Um, so okay, Miss Grass, are you currently hiring, or when you do hire for people to be part of your amazing team, what do you look for?
Yeah, we are currently hiring. It really depends what role, each role. We have a like hiring, I can't now remember what we call it, but essentially it's like a one sheet Google Doc before we go out for a hire. We internally align on, the role we're looking for, the like mission of the role, how would we define success of this role? We try to actually quantify that, like what would success look like? The job description is hyperlinked in this document. And then we actually set kind of aligned questions throughout the interview process, because multiple people on the team will interview each specific role depending on what the role is. So, the traits that we look for, both hard and soft skills, are somewhat nuanced depending on the role. However, I guess the soft skills aren't that nuanced, where, we really look for, we are this like the culture of we're really hardworking, and we're still like startup vibe where we move fast, we're flexible, so looking for someone who can fit into that culture and is extremely hardworking and is really passionate about their career. And then of course, like needs to have the experience and the know-how of whatever the specific role is that we're looking for.
Yeah.
You're the expert here. I should be asking you this question.
No, I mean, I think, well, I think that based on the ethos picture, I've told you this to your face before, I'll say it again, like you should be able to hire the best and brightest people, because they'll be professionally unlocked if they're the right fit and align with your brand. So I think you can hire A players for sure. Okay, looking back at the other version of yourself, maybe, thinking about, excited about cannabis, passionate about it, wants to start a brand, wants to start an ancillary business, wants to get involved in cannabis as a career. Advice for them right now?
Yeah, I mean, like I run optimistically. I think probably most entrepreneurs do. Like I would say that there is still so much opportunity in this space. I think it's obviously a lot different than it was in 2017 when we launched Miss Grass, and the industry has matured, but now there's like all these different markets. I would just say, really knowing what you feel like your passion and your skill set is, and seeing like how that fits into the respective space, as well as kind of trying to look ahead at where this is going, where I think there has been so many investments or businesses that, launched or got a lot of funding in elements that upon the industry maturing, it became obsolete. So I also think in this space, just given how fast things evolve, it's smart to also like look ahead a couple of years and make sure that investing time in X, Y, and Z today will be accretive. It'll continue to incrementally grow in value over time.
Yeah, I mean, I think don't do your research, see what it's been, where it's going, like see
Yeah.
other people that had your same idea, why it's worked or why it hasn't worked. And I always think a great thing to do is, and you even said it, like if there's jobs available in your in your area, get a part-time job
Yeah.
as a bud tender and just see what it's like to work in the industry, get, and get some perspective before you go in with 2 feet, if that's available. And it's not the first time I've heard that story too, like, where somebody, got their first taste of it by that, and then figured out more about what this industry was lacking, right? Just by being on the front lines of it, of that consumer, experience. So I think that's a great way to figure it out if it's for you or not. Um, Kate Miller, Miss Grass, thank you very much for the interview today. It was a true pleasure, and you know, um, I look forward to getting a party pack in Florida next time I'm out there.
Nice. Really appreciate you, David. Always good to see you.